groups as well. So these groups remobilized, their families, their friends, their allies, other Liberians in the diaspora who were from that lineage remobilized, and that's how the war started. So this few days, President Bouakai, who is now the president, decided, because most of these people, there have not been any proper burial ceremonies. We didn't even know where their bodies were.
Like the people that Doe murdered?
No, yeah, the people that Doe murdered, but also Doe's body. Doe also got murdered on live TV, almost being chopped into pieces.
By Charles Taylor?
No, Prince Johnson.
Oh.
Yeah, so you read more. So President Bouakai held a ceremony recently doing the proper reburial of all those senior government officials that were executed, President Tolbert himself along with President Tolbert. And then also reburial of President Doe as well happened. They happened in separate ceremonies. So this happened a few days ago. So that's how raw this conversation, and it has sparked the conversation again on social media in different ways. So this is timely, but I will turn things over to you to get us started as to why you zeroed in on this topic. And by the way, Francis is reading this book. I will give a copy to each of you because we will start to dig deeper on it. It's called This Child Shall Be Great, and it's by Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. But it digs deep into a lot of the Liberian history. Obviously, again, some of it is our context, but it elevates the issue. And it's a good segue for digging deeper into this. So each of you will get this. And maybe for our next few episodes, we'll spend some time on chapters. Yeah. Just looking at what you are unearthing and your reflections on them. But Francis has started already, as you can see, so I'll let him set the stage for it. Francis, take this away.
So, there's a lot to unpack there. So, like, what I think about the burying of, like, the bodies?
No. We're talking about the topic that you brought about specifically. Let me read it again. And it's connected to that. That's why I set the stage. You said, Liberia's history of discrimination between the social classes, the unfair relationship between Americo-Liberians and natives, and how it affects the country to this day. Okay. So let us know, what were you thinking about coming up with that topic?
So when I came up with that topic, I was once again reading that book, and like I wasn't aware that the Americo-Liberian class was like, I knew that they came to like Liberia, but I thought they came like and they were equal, but that was far from the truth, right? It was like basically an oligarchy. It was really corrupt. They let international companies come into Liberia, destabilize it, hoarded wealth, right? It was really unequal and it was really corrupt, and I wanted like to dig deeper in this podcast, and that's what brought about the topic for me. And like as you said, like it's like that divide, I feel like, is almost the Liberian equivalent of American slavery, right? Because to this day, people still have those debates. People still have like the country's still affected to some extent over what happened. I feel like that can be seen in Liberia. As you said, the buryings, right? It's very controversial, and I'm not sure. People like for Liberia, like, is there positive? Is it negative? Like, who's from what you're seeing? Like, who's more so supporting it and who's not?
Supporting what?
Like the burying.
So we'll go around, and maybe it might be great. You guys want me to just lay a quick premise on that piece. So, slavery, we all know happened. People from Africa were transported all over the world, mostly the Caribbean, what is called the Caribbean now, in North America, in Europe, on different plantations. When the abolition of slavery got really heated up to the point where it became the trend. The United States particularly had something else going on, where they set up a whole agency, the American Colonization Society, with the intention of repatriating free slaves back to Africa. Now, people will argue that there were political undertones to it. There was this fear that if you set all these people free, after I don't know how many years we've enslaved them, who knows what they could do here. So there was almost like this comfort of, like, let's get them back to Africa, they can do whatever they want. But there were also some blacks who were adamant that they wanted to go back, because they never believed you could truly be free here. Some of them thought, like, you know what, these guys are just saying this thing is a matter of time. Because even with the abolition of slavery, they were still in the South. People who were like, we don't care, they were still enslaving people. So the group that went back to what is now called Liberia, right, in that particular area, settled there. And there were clashes. There were a series of clashes with the natives when they came in, but eventually they found a way to reconcile or found a way to live with each other. But these people came with a mentality that they had learned in North America, that the only way to get ahead is to enslave others. But think about it, right? For a very long time, that's how they saw it. So what they did, they set themselves up as the class of the day and mimic the same situation they live under in slavery. That included treating natives as, house helps, housemaids, under very harsh conditions in some cases. Now we need to be careful. Because that doesn't mean every one of these people were that bad. No, there were some good families who were of the Americo-Liberian descent that, in fact, because of them today, many natives are educated as a result of that. And then there were also some bad ones. But overall, it was a system of marginalizing. So, for example, those days, land ownership was not a thing in a place like Liberia. Land was communal property. The chiefs or whoever would assign properties. There were also systems of governance that they met there. They had provinces there. They undermined all of that to consolidate their control. So they became the ruling class of the day. They set up government. That's how Liberia got independence. They designed it right after what they knew of the United States, pretty much. Photocopied the United States Constitution, literally. Copy and paste it. The pledge of Liberia is just the same pledge of the United States. The only difference is they move the United States and put Liberia, pretty much. So set up the same government, and the U.S. government at the time was also a racist, very racist government. So you can see how they copied all of these things into Liberia. Set up government, land ownership was all theirs, to the point where in Liberia those days you could not vote if you were not a property owner.
Yeah.
And the only people who owned property was them. There was one party system, so whoever they decided was president among themselves. And this was like maybe 300 or more families, by the way. So this kind of absolute power. At the beginning, a lot of the natives, they didn't care because for them politics was not a thing. As long as they had a place to make their farm, feed their families and all of that. But then when the inhumane treatment started to get worse, it became a problem. Now let me end the story here. Eventually, the natives started to realize how important this education business was. If you were not educated, quote unquote, Western education was difficult. So they started to work hard to send their children to school. In some cases, some of these same Americo-Liberian families took some native children who they liked, changed their names, gave them their names, took them as their own children, and sent them to school as well. So they started to become enlightened about what was happening. The social economic marginalization, deprivation, and all of that. So they started to agitate. The University of Liberia campus became the hotbed. Liberia had one of the most popular kind of freedom movements those days on the African continent. Like people used to come, student advocates used to come from all over the continent to Liberia, almost like to come and study how to take on the movement. That's how powerful it was.
Against the Americo-Liberians?
Like, in Liberia it was against the Americo-Liberian ruling class, but in other countries it was against colonialism, because remember, Liberia was the only African independent country at the time. So Ghana, Sierra Leone, all these places were under colonial rule very early on. But in the 70s and so, most of these African countries had just left colonial rule, most of them, and were still fighting the remnants of colonial control in different ways. So these largely sons and daughters of natives, but also has some sons and daughters of Americo-Liberians as well who disagree with their own Americo-Liberian class. Torbo's greatest sin was the fact that he abandoned the Americo-Liberian class. He disagreed with how they were leading.
He did.
So decided, it was under him most of the native children started to go to school. He provided scholarships. It was even under him he decided, agreed to get a two-party system for the first time, to approve another political party to challenge that. But then, most of the natives were like, this is too good to be true. You are a true son of these people. So he was bearing the sins of the over 100 years of his lineage, marginalization. So it was hard to now come and say you are an ally to the same native people. But he too had his own problem. Their family owned almost everything in the country. So the biggest challenge he had was when he came up and tried to say he wanted to support local Liberian agriculture, especially rice farming, by increasing the price of imported parboiled, American parboiled rice to be so expensive that it would force people to buy the local Liberian rice.
Tariffs.
Not tariffs. He wasn't putting tariffs on them. He was just increasing the selling price on the market. So if you import that rice from America, let's say, and they say you can only sell it for $20 a bag, but the Liberian rice, local rice, was $15. So it forces you.
Yeah.
Except that his family, I think, had the largest rice farm in the country. So the propaganda, whether true or not, is that people are like, they want their family to get richer. Because if they are the largest producer of local Liberian rice, and that's where the problem started, and that's how Torbo got murdered. But it was bigger than that also. The rice issue brought it to the fore, but it was like over 100 years of burdens that he was carrying from the Americo-Liberian class. So let me set the tune there. I'll stop there. Get us started. Marty will come to you. Let me will come to you. Your reflections and thoughts.
Damn. Nah, like, I was reading on Tolbert, like from what I was seeing, like he wanted to like change. Like he was compared to the previous president, who was like little sketchy. I think his name was Tubman. He was like an authoritarian. He was sketchy. Like he vouched for equality, but at the same time was like oppressing people and like eliminating political rivals and stuff like that. But I feel like compared to Tolbert, like Tolbert was honestly, I don't think he deserved to get murdered. Like he didn't like deserve to get murdered. He honestly could have like changed Liberia, and him getting murdered, I feel like worsened the country in the long term. Because like if there's stability, if there's gradual change instead of sudden change, I feel like a lot of the problems that Liberia is facing, like for example, before the Civil War, there was libraries, correct, in Liberia?
Okay, before the Civil War, there were all kinds of things. Liberia was the top of the chain on the entire African continent.
Actually,
Liberia had the same GNP at some point as Japan. We were exporting shrimp to countries like Japan.
Wow, I did not know that.
Oh yeah, the University of Liberia was one of the top premier institutions anywhere. Americans used to go to the University of Liberia. Liberia was top notch. However, only 25% of the population was enjoying that full benefit.
Yeah.
So it's not that the country was not. At one point, the Liberian dollar I think was 1-to-1 with the USD as well. So, but only 25% of the population was really fully. That's where the agitation came from.
And I feel like the question is, under Tolbert, could that 25% turn to 80% maybe? And I feel like that's where a lot of native Liberians were like questioning, like they got scared, so they had a reactionary response, and that was the Civil War. And I'm not gonna say should the Civil War happen, because it shouldn't have happened, right? But do you think Tolbert's gradual change would have benefited Liberia more so than radical change, but not in the form of civil war? So like, let's say the native Liberians, like they protested, right, and they deposed Tolbert. Would things have changed for the better or for the worse compared to keeping Tolbert in power? It's like a what if kind of.
That's a very good question.
Yeah.
Marty, you can jump
Okay,
in.
before I answer that, I gotta like understand.
Go microphone a little closer.
I gotta understand something. So there.
Hold on 1 second. Is a mic on?
What not working?
Marty, can we hear you?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I was just trying to make sure her mic was on.
Is that 3?
Yeah.
Good. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm trying to understand. So the Americano Liberians, the Americo Liberians, those are what we refer to today as the Congo people.
Yeah, in general, that's a general term that it refers into as the Congo people.
Okay. Personally, I'm not gonna lie, I am guilty. I'm not really educated on a lot of Liberian history, which I am very embarrassed to admit. So I will do my research and do more. I don't really know much about President Tolbert, right? Tolbert and Tubman, they confuse me.
Tolbert.
Tolbert.
Tolbert was the most recent one. Tubman was the one who served for 27 years. Yeah, but Tolbert was the one. He's controversial in a way, but he's also, many Liberians believe he's the best president Liberia ever had. I mean, again, that's one group. And another group is saying, yeah, but he was vice president of Tubman. So he was part of the elite class when the suppression was. So it's not like he was.
But even then, Tubman was advocating for equality, was he not? On paper, he was, and he was trying to make native Liberians more equal in the process. Was he not?
Again, there are one class of Liberians who would argue that. There are another class of Liberians who would tell you the reality was different than what should have happened in terms of wealth distribution, in terms of access to opportunities, education, and all of that stuff, right? So again, and that's why these conversations are very complicated. It's not like one is absolutely right and one is absolutely wrong.
Yeah, it's never.
You're going to have a way to have the conversation and see where you get, right? So I guess today we are where we are. But let me, before I ask a question, or you all can jump in, what's your thoughts?
Well, I'm not very in tune with the topic, but based off what we were saying, it did sound like on paper what he was doing would better the country and push it forward.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't sit here and say it would have, because I wasn't there. I can't really speak for what was actually happening, but it sounds like it was on track for a better Liberia.
So a lot of people argue that Tolbert was doing the right things in a lot of people's argument, but then a lot of people also believe that there were times that he took wrong decisions, mimicking the same of the past before him. And some of his actions show that yes, he was taking the right step, approving another political party and all of that stuff. But I think people felt that it was almost practically impossible for him to completely break away from the elite class, and some people believe that's why he was even murdered, because of that. And at the same time, some people could not convince themselves that Tolbert could have entirely empowered the natives to have more autonomy or access over the American Liberian class.
I mean, why would they want to do that? Shouldn't it be equal? Why would they want more?
Or empower them to be equal to the American Liberian class. That's some people argue, and some people got different evidences for which to show that. But I guess what I would like to really come down to is to understand today what that has done, right? So those days, to speak your native language, you get whipped for it in school if you spoke any other thing than English.
Wait, what? Back then?
Back in Liberia.
Wow.
Let me give you some other example how stark it was. You couldn't speak, if you could speak Gio, for example, and you spoke it, you got beaten for it. You were not allowed to. In fact, families would struggle to get their children to not speak it, to speak English, because it was seen as a negative. It was seen as a negative. You were uncivilized. You were backwards, or whatever that is, right? Those days, your last name determined what access you got. If you were a Williams or a Witherspoon or a Washington, or so to the point where when they used to see you, when you call you to ask you who on the chat, I mean who your parents are. So the determination of your status was based on what your lineage was. Now, take it for what it's worth. Let's fast forward it today. It has fractured our society in a very interesting way when you talk about the social class, right? Even property ownership. A lot of the families claiming to own vast properties in Liberia today, dig a little deeper, when did they get out of property ownership was during those days, where there was really their parents just gave it to them because they control everything.
But I thought after the natives took over, they redid all that control that the American Liberians had, or did they not?
The natives went on the extreme as well. Militarily, just started taking things as well, and in some cases, but what happened was that native movement collapsed when Doe was murdered into full-scale civil war. So now you come back to today, there are people who show up and say they own the land, the person can show you a deed from 1933, right? Think about it, right? Or the person can show you a deed from 1940, right? So even though the native king took it, blah, 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 but the person still got a deed from 1933. And if you went to court, and the person produced a deed from 1933. But the question is, what do you think? Because we're talking about extremism. The actions of, they call them the progressives that came in, went to the other extreme. Was there another way that this could have been looked at rather than the extremes that we talk about murdering? I think it was 13 men on firing squad on TV. These were people's uncles, fathers, brothers, nephews, right? You name it. The children watched it. The video is still on YouTube. It's actually on YouTube. You can look at it there, right? And then going after their families, right? Confiscating property without any proper judicial process, right? Setting up a military junta, like all of that stuff, right? That's extremism. Do you think there was another approach that could have been used versus this extremist approach, because what you did now, you planted a seed in the other families who then eventually came back, that resulted to the full-scale civil war, which we are still fighting to recover from.
Well, okay, so the second civil war is American Liberians rising up, right?
No, that's the first civil war.
No, the second one was, the first one was native, but the second one was American Liberians.
No, the first one was a military coup, 1980. So it was not a full-scale civil war. The president was just murdered and the military took over with Samuel Doe. But then the subsequent extremism of Samuel Doe then led to a full-scale civil war in 1989. That was the first civil war. And that was the children, descendants, sympathizers of those families coming back, right? Led by Charles Taylor, who is also, because he's still alive, a descendant of the American Liberian.
Okay, I see.
Right? And then he was overwhelmingly supported by families, friends of people who were already carrying this bitterness in them from what happened to their families or so. Led to a full-scale civil war in 1989. Samuel Doe was killed, fought. 1997, there was peace. Charles Taylor won the elections. And then a year later, another civil war started with the Mandingos and other groups who were also now being marginalized and chased out also by Charles Taylor.
Like native groups, or were they?
No, Charles Taylor was from American descendant.
But he was chasing on native groups.
Some of them were, most of them were native group, became political prisoners. He was trying to take shot at whoever he perceived as his enemies. Most of them were native groups. So the crime with Roosevelt Johnson group. These people were leaders of this group, but then in Liberia, the way they did it was if the person was a crime and leading, let's say, a rebel group, the other person took it against the whole tribe. If this person was killed, leading it, they took it against the whole tribe, so it became more tribalistic than anything else. And then another civil war started in 1998, right after he won elections. That was the second civil war. That went on to 2003. So but I'm trying to get at this point of extremism, right? What do you do when somebody is authoritarian, right? Whatever that is. Is it peaceful, non-violent movements that we should continue on to do, or is war or extremism justified to solve the problem? That's the conversation we were having, but I'm putting it in this particular context with Liberia, where we saw extremism get rid of Tolbert, another extremism got rid of Doe, another extremism got rid of Taylor. So you see, it's like a perpetual cycle at some point.
I don't think extremism to the point of like what those examples you gave, those aren't justified. All right, obviously they're not justified. But so the income inequality, the statute that you brought up, where only 25% of Liberians were experiencing that during Tolbert's
By the way,
years.
that number, there's no scientific proof, but majority, what I was trying to say is majority of
Like
Liberians were
inside.
marginalized, and there was minority enjoying a lot of that wealth.
So at that time, because Liberia was heavily influenced by America, that means that it's a capitalist system, right?
Yeah.
So the question is, could Tolbert really control that number? Like, did he have power to control that number, or was it just like a result of the system that he operates in? That, like, what do you think?
That's a good question. I will honestly say I don't know, but I also say the Liberian presidency is very powerful. It's an imperialist form of presidency, and some people argue that yes, he was doing enough to change that situation. Most people argue that no, he was the wrong messenger, because he himself had benefited, his family have benefited from that. So it's easier to say you're changing it with other people, but it's almost people found him hypocritical. I'm hearing an echo. Okay, it's good now. People found it to be hypocritical in some cases. Other people found it to be genuine. Other people thought that was the way to go. So you had this divide. But overall, I think the agitation from people was that they don't think it was happening too fast. Remember, this is after 100 years of this stuff. So some people feel like people had gotten to the point when it was too late to come back, for people that they could not believe, unless it was a native person who understood the struggles of the natives, that another descendant of the American Liberia could have been the angel to save the day. There are people who own in that school of thought as well.
That makes sense.
Let's read some of the posts here quickly. C. Small will say, please incorporate America in their regime change when you disagree with them into the equation. So I think it's talking about how America had influence
Yeah, they definitely
regime change all the time in Liberia. And that's a good point, because with Tolbert, he disagreed with the Americans. And when he disagreed with the Americans, including his international politics as well, on the issue of Palestine, he was the first president globally to stand in the joint session of the U.S. Congress and condemn Israel's action in Gaza.
Like in the 80s and stuff?
This was the late 70s, 80s. Then it was not a thing. You dare not challenge the United States, right? Even with the rice situation, the company producing the Powerball rice that was being imported in Liberia was from Texas.
Yeah, international corporation.
So going after them was going after the United States as well. Two, he started to do this non-alignment, where he started that he would engage with Russia, he would engage with communists. He said, I will engage with anybody. That robbed the United States the wrong way. So they had an influence to play, and that's
They
why I think
definitely had
it's talking
influence.
about as well. But anyway, extremism. As we're seeing in Liberia, extremism, where one group of extremists went after, with extreme methods, remove another. Started, Tolbert was brutally murdered. 13 men murdered on firing squad. Additional number of families murdered. That led to another form of extremism from their descendants as well, who came back for Doe. Full-scale civil war. Doe was killed. Charles Taylor became president. Went after others. Extremism came back for him too. Removed him forcibly, and now he's in jail in The Hague. Now, that's not to say these people didn't commit all the crimes that you read about that they commit. That's not the point. But my point is, the solution we've used so far has been this form of extremism that we're seeing one begets the other. What do we do?
I mean, personally, from my point of view in these things, and like obviously I wasn't there at the time to like witness all this history like come to life or all these things that we're talking, but honestly I think from everything that happened from the first time a president was killed to that extreme level where they even went to harm his family, it set the stage for other things to happen. Because forget politicians getting killed, these are things that also regular civilians suffer. Because we know when election comes around and people are saying, oh, what party do you support? Oh, I support CDC, or I support what's the other party, I forgot.
Unity Party.
Yeah, Unity Party or CDC. You know, if a person that supports CDC sees you and you don't support CDC, it becomes a point where they even go against you to kill you or to harm you in a certain type of way. So I think that really set the stage for us to say, oh, this is okay. We should not be okay with killing anybody, no matter what point of view they come from. Like, it don't matter if they don't agree with what you're doing or what your mindset is. If, say for example, with President Tolbert, right? Even though he came from the side of
the American Liberians,
the American Liberians, and he probably would never understand the struggle the Native Liberians went through. He still was able to stand up and say, okay, I understand your struggle. I don't know about it because I was never in your stage, but I understand and I see it, so I'm gonna help you. The right response to that should have been like, okay, we have somebody there to help us. It shouldn't have been, you don't understand us, you'll never be a part of us. I don't think he was trying to be a part of it, in my personal opinion. I think that's why people see it as wrong.
I think he was Tolbert. He literally, I read in the book, he went to a village and said, I am you and you are me, and shared rights together.
I think the point Martinez make, go ahead.
We can't sit there and say, oh, just because he said that he was trying to be, he would not have left his mansion to go live in a village because he wanted to be a part of those people. He would have never done that. Okay, I think his whole issue was he wanted these people to feel like he was a part of them.
Yeah.
But he wasn't, and that's where the issue.
He wasn't by lineage, but I feel like, let's say I'm white, right? And I come on this podcast. You have white workers, right?
A lot of people work for me that are not black, yeah.
You focus on marginalized communities, right? It's like saying you can't do that because you're white. Like, I don't feel that's not fair. Like, you can't control where you're born, and if you're trying to actually make a difference,
No, but that's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying all I'm saying is, even if he's saying it or the things that he did was trying to make it seem like he wanted to be a part of these people, no matter what he did, he was still going to be seen as not a part of them.
That's what I'm trying to say. So
no, but you're saying when he went there and say, oh, I'm you and you're me, that makes it seem like he wanted to like
be a part.
Yeah, be a part of it, but he would have never
be a part of what the struggle,
or be like them, or understand the struggle, or whatever. That
so same logic. So if a white person would work at Empowerment Square, they can't understand the struggles of a marginalized community. Should they not work here? That's what I'm trying to say.
No, I don't think so. I think the point Martin is making is that even if you said it, you would never understand it to the extent that those are living it.
But you can still help. That's what I'm trying to say.
No, I'm not saying he couldn't help. All I'm saying is I understand why the Native American people felt like he couldn't have been the right person.
The Native Liberian.
The Native Liberian, sorry.
Why they felt suspicious.
Yes.
I think that's the point she's making.
Why they couldn't believe that he could have been the one to help them reach the level that they wanted to be, or to be equal as the.
I understand the suspicion, but after what he's did, like what he the actions he took, especially compared to Tubman, who was just really just iffy.
So let me say this to you, for example, and again, we're just debating the thing. Let me jump in, please, because we're very nice, like open field. His family still owns some of the biggest businesses in the country.
Tolbert?
Yeah, the family, period. His brother Frank Tolbert running the large. So we're the elites of the day, very wealthy. Still, 75% or more of the country still live in abject poverty.
In Liberia?
Yeah, at the time. I'm just saying at the time.
Okay.
Right, still now to today, in fact. But here he is, trying to be this revolutionary president, progressive or whatever that is, but still enjoying the largesse of the corruption. And your family also, think about it, you went to a local village where nobody in that village has ever seen a schoolhouse. ever for over 100 years, right? And you, because of your family lineage, is the reason why that happened. Then you show up as their son, because he was vice president of Tottenham. So
That's
the
also a
sketchy,
thing.
fishy Tottenham you're talking about, he was Tottenham's vice
You
president.
said yourself, Liberian presidents have near imperialistic powers.
I don't disagree, but you don't, the ordinary man in the village or whatever, you think that's what they're thinking?
Nah.
The reason he became president was because President Tottenham died in office from illness. So he, Tolbert, as the vice president, automatically became president as a result. So again, we're not here judging Tolbert, what he was or not, but we're looking at the context of what people felt at the moment. Can we trust this guy? Because people were asking that question genuinely. Can we trust this guy? Is he not going to betray us? What we really want and what we really want to do, will he give it to us? And then Tolbert too was trying to pace himself gradually to not just disrupt the whole thing. So sometimes then it looks like you are defending what was already there, even though you're saying, no, let's approach this gradually, properly. Blah, blah.
And he was doing that because
And he also
his-
had a lot of political prisoners. He had thrown a lot of native protesters and leaders, advocates in jail. A lot of them were in jail as well.
Yeah, he wasn't perfect. I'm not advocating
Yeah.
for that.
Yep.
But what I'm trying to say is that Tolbert, right? There's a difference between saying something and doing something, and I feel like he did both. So he wasn't always perfect. I'm not saying that, but he did make an effort to go in that direction.
And,
Oh, no,
and a lot of people
absolutely.
believe that.
He did.
No, a
Yeah.
lot of people believe that. I
So
don't think that's a
you're saying
disagreement.
that because he's not native, that he we know that he won't understand the struggles. We know that, right? But like, honestly,
Okay, let me
empathy.
ask you
He
this.
he didn't live through it, but he could understand the struggles. It's like me
No,
understanding the struggle of like
definitely.
Palestinians, right? Like he can still advocate just because of where he was born doesn't.
Can you
limit that.
confidently say you understand the struggle of the Palestinians
No,
fully?
I can empathize with them. That's all I'm saying.
Exactly.
I can empathize with them.
Yeah, go ahead,
That's
Marty.
the
And
point.
then let me jump in after that. Marty, go ahead.
First off, I know you're passionately like you're not fully Liberian, right?
I'm Liberian.
Fully
I'm
Liberian.
fully
Yeah,
Liberian.
fully.
Both mom and dad.
Oh yeah, you,
Yes.
you was born in.
He was
I was
born in Ghana,
Okay,
in Boderboro.
okay, that's what I meant.
Yeah, but
Sorry.
fully, no, he is, yeah.
Fully.
Go ahead, yeah.
Have you ever been to the country?
No.
Yeah, he hasn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not even trying to say this to
Yeah.
even like not say that you wouldn't, like you're Liberian and I understand that. But as somebody that was born in the country and lived there for a number of years, even to this day, you kind of see the difference still between
Those classes.
You still?
Yes,
Yes, still.
you can still see it. Monrovia is the capital city, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, it is a capital city. When you leave Monrovia and go to Grand Bassa, for example, okay, I would say Grand Bassa is one of the most established
Yeah.
county in Liberia. Like it's better,
Yeah.
definitely, than if you go to places further in the country. So even when you go from Monrovia to Grand Bassa, you see the difference in the people way of living, the way to talk, and all the stuff. Like if I left Monrovia and go to Grand Bassa, it shouldn't have been a problem for me, for the people there to speak, their native language. It should have been everybody there was going to be comfortable to speak Bassa, but there's still people in there that don't even know how to speak Bassa, and that's because of
I'm not denying the history. I'm just saying Tolbert actively made steps to change that. And people are condemning him for his heritage, which is wrong because they're condemned for their heritage as well. So it's kind of hypocritical.
So
That's
the
all I'm
question
saying.
is, how do you account for 100 years of treatments equivalent to slavery?
Exactly. My point. That's another point. I wanna
But
make.
for a system, I'm just giving you the school of thought. I'm playing devil advocate. I'm giving you the different sides of the argument. And Tolbert himself rose to prominence up to the presidency as a result of that system, where many others who were agitating probably could have been the ones that would have been president if there was a more fair, equitable system and process.
So-
and Tolbert was a participant.
So,
So it's not that he just came from outside as an outsider. He was vice president.
wait, so
And people were like, where was your advocacy? And I agree with you, the presidency is imperial in Liberia. However, the other people who didn't even have any power were brave enough to be agitating against the imperial powerful president. They had no power, no position. Tolbert had power. Tolbert had position. Tolbert had prominence. So some people were asking the question, where were you? I'm just telling you where the suspicion would have come from. People are like, all of a sudden now because you're president and you want us to believe that you would do anything different. Let me, any thoughts?
Well, so like I can bring up a term like nowadays as we like it's becoming an outdated term now. The term that I don't see color. People are starting to debunk that term, talking about that like you should see color because we aren't all the same. Even if you want to come to me and say we are one, like how he was trying to say to the natives, you will never be like. You may want to connect with them on a deeper level, but you will never be the same. You'll never live the experience they lived, and you'll never.
Yeah, I agree with that. You would never. But if you can empathize with them and try to make active steps, especially compared to your ancestors, right? So, because right now we're grouping Tolbert with his ancestors.
Okay.
And, like that's not fair. It's like grouping
But
my white friend with.
But I think I want to let me finish that line of
That's
thought.
what I'm
Let's see how he comes up with. Let's finish that line of thought. I think that's an important point that's coming. Go
Then
ahead.
it's hard to connect with somebody that's never like imagine you went through something, right? And then somebody's coming up to you saying, "Oh yeah, I understand you," but they've never been through it, so how would they understand it?
Empathizing.
That's not understanding, though. There's a difference between trying to empathize with somebody and understanding them completely.
I've never.
And that's the reason why people were skeptical of you leading it. Because if you're only empathizing, then how can you claim that you are able to change the situation as just empathizing?
Like he still has all this money. He's still doing this, no matter what.
So
happens.
he should give up all his assets.
I'm not saying
No, that's
that.
not what we're
Then why
saying.
at that point?
No matter what happens, he'll be good. It's not like he's making an effort to change the country, but what efforts is he doing to understand the people rather than just changing the country? Changing the country is the first step. I mean, like that's our end goal, but what steps are you doing to change?
So let me make this clear. We're condemning Tolbert. Wait, just on
No, first of all, I want to use a strong term. We're not
Yeah, we're not
condemning. We're trying to
condemning, yeah.
understand what happened, why it happened, and how extremism played the role that it played.
Now, I'm trying to say is that you guys are putting it against Tolbert that he wasn't born native Liberian, doesn't understand the struggles, right?
No,
But then-
we're playing the arguments and positions of a lot of native Liberians who were in that movement, that Tolbert was just another beneficiary of this corrupt system, that he enjoyed it and he became president all of a sudden, wanted, and were doing things, positive things. I must say I have read some of them. But people are saying, yeah, for me that was not good enough. It was you trying to redeem yourself. Like I would talk about black money people. You went and looted people money or whatever that is, and now you started a big business and you wash it clean. And now you're a successful businessman, right? Should we now say you're the greatest philanthropist on earth or whatever that is? Do we forget that?
I feel like it's unfair to blame someone for the system that they're brought up in. So let me give you
The
an
system they're
example.
brought up in or the system they participate and have power in also?
Do you have evidence? I'm not saying I know, but
No, I have evidence. He became those days, to have become vice president in what it was called a true wing party, you had to be power. There were a lot of powerful people. So for him to have become because he had to be appointed, there was no two party, it was just one party. So clearly he was a powerful figure. Now, but I compare it to the people who were very powerless, who were brave to stand up to the government. They had no power, they had none whatsoever. So this is not a condemnation of one's right, one's wrong. It's about saying, do we understand the two perspectives?
shit. Well, if that's the case, if you really did participate in the system, if you really did, if you really did not care about the Liberians, as people would say, right?
Yeah.
Then why would he put his neck out? Because they read in the book, his ministers were like revolting and getting mad. He was under a lot of scrutiny, so he
Yep.
sacrificed that social prestige and a part of that power that social prestige comes with, right?
Yep.
To stick his neck out for the Liberian people. So why would he do that if he was truly?
So let me throw this out, and
Yeah.
maybe Magic can come in. So some people argue that at the time, the opposition movement was on the rise. The pressure, and they were getting alliances from South Africa, what was happening with apartheid. They were getting support from Sierra Leone with other, freedom fighters. So people are saying at some point it felt like it was inevitable that the movement of the natives, those who were agitating, was on the rise. So there were people who felt that this was a ploy by Tolbert to infiltrate and kind of dissolve or kind of like make it weak. There are people who argue that. Again, I wasn't there. We read the histories. So we're only elevating the different schools of thought. There are people like, no, you can't trust these guys. We don't want you to empathize with us. We want you to give us power.
He did that.
No, how did he give them power?
The opposition party, he gave.
Well, that was not power. Becoming an opposition party doesn't mean that the government still doesn't control the state, right?
It's still political power.
Yeah, but again, these were people's school of thoughts. They were saying that's not enough. You've ran a one party state for 100 years. You've taken all of the resources. We need access to resources. We need this. So there were all these agitation people like, how can we trust this guy? He still sit with his family people. They still have their conversations, and many of them are still some of the people who hate us the most. So how can we say we can bring him in, allow him, support him over women? And Toba was very, very inspirational person, period. This is a man who is of the American Liberian class, but he learned to read and write Pele and could speak it better than a native Pele speaking person. So there were characteristics of him that you had to admire that inspired a lot of native people. Yet, people were like, just because you're charismatic, just because you're inspirational, how can we fully trust that this is not a ploy to infiltrate and just dismantle natives? Again, that was the school of thought.
The argument against that, like hypotheticals, right? Like on this school of thought, right? Tubman, he advocated, not to the same extent, but he similarly like went on record saying, "Oh, all Liberians are equal," right? He himself was trying to integrate native people, but the way Tolbert did it compared to Tubman gives legitimacy to Tolbert's way of doing it as an authentic way of doing it. Because I feel like Tubman, like I don't know the facts fully, but like I remember from the book, like brains remembering that like Tubman was advocating for Afro, like the equality, and so was Tolbert, but the way of doing it was vastly different. So I feel like that shows the authenticity of one compared to the other. So that's the argument that people on that side can make.
Yeah, fair point, Marty.
Honestly,
We got one more topic, so we wrap on this and go to our last topic.
I don't know, I'm kind of getting lost.
So
I personally,
this is just intro. I think after reading this book, I'll give each of you a copy.
I feel like he has
Yeah,
more
he has a
leverage.
bit of it. He has some more leverage because he's gone in the book.
Yeah.
I haven't read the entire book though. Only like I'm not even finished the Tolbert year chapter, so
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's still early in, but still, you've gotten some juice. Let me know, any thoughts?
Not really.
I can personally say that I understand like the both side of the struggle. Like I understand where the native people were coming from and why they felt like they needed to uprise and take control of everything, because it's like they were there, and then all these American Liberians that just came out of slavery and just took over. It's like, but I was here first, and they were probably doing well and supporting themselves and feeding their family before, and then these people came over and just took over everything and started to enslave them in their own land.
keyword these
So
people.
I want
not
us to
Tolbert.
take on a comment.
These people, not
I want to
Tolbert.
make this show
Tolbert
interesting.
was a part of these
No,
people.
but
Yes.
Tolbert.
Tolbert was
You
a
can't
part of these
blame
people.
Tolbert's ancestors, bro.
No, but that is ancestor. He was vice.
You can't blame Tolbert for his ancestors.
But he was vice
But
president.
he's still a part of them.
That's
you know?
vice presidency.
For-
He
Forget about
still,
his
had the
ancestors.
mindset of them still, if you really
Questionable.
think about it.
So let me-
Sure,
so let
she
me
was a part
read-
of the government, and
Yeah.
look how she ended.
So then,
But go ahead, Lemuel.
look at residential schools. We're still blaming Catholic
Exactly.
Catholic churches to this
Years
day.
ago.
We're not blaming individuals particularly. We're not blaming the Pope for that, are we? No, we're not.
Oh, the
No.
Pope is the one that's been asked to render the full apology. He's the one that's been criticized.
He's apologizing on behalf of the Catholic Church.
But he's the one
They're
being
not blaming.
No, they're
the Pope.
criticized. They're even blaming him for
Who was
refusing.
blaming him?
When the Pope came,
not blaming him, they're
when the
blaming-
Pope visited Canada, do you know what actually happened?
He apologized, yeah, because
No, the natives are blaming him. For example, he has refused to send the records that the Vatican has.
No, Pope Francis was a very.
He has refused. The Vatican has refused to submit the actual records. So the native community are saying, yeah, we hear apology, but that's not enough. You need to return all of the records, because you know what the records does? It names the individuals who were the actual leaders.
See, now he's actually participating in those crimes of his ancestors, so he can't, like, I agree, blame him for that, but you can't, let's say I'm white.
So we're not blaming Tolbert. I think the question we are asking is, can you also blame the natives for having the suspicions that they had that they acted
And
on?
So
also-
you're blaming
also-
Tolbert, but like reframing it
I'm
in
not blaming
a sneaky
Tolbert.
way. You know?
I'm not blaming
No,
Tolbert.
also
I'm
with
saying
him-
it's a fact. Tolbert benefited from that system. The natives did not. It's a fact. Tolbert became vice president. None of the natives became. It's a fact. Tolbert family was one of the wealthiest in the country as a result of that system, which he was enjoying.
And
It's a
Tolbert
fact.
uses wealth to help the Liberian
No,
people.
he was using the Liberian wealth because he was president. That was not his personal wealth anymore. When you're president of the country, you're using the country's resources.
So he should give his resources away, is what you're saying. That should have been.
No, that's not what
Okay,
I'm saying.
but
We are
you're
establishing the
working
facts, and now establish the fact with the natives also. So what I'm saying to you, were the natives wrong for
Like,
having the
and-
suspicion that they had? I'm not talking about murdering.
No. I'm not saying
murdering
they're
Tolbert.
wrong. They can have suspicion, but I'm saying that I feel like his actions justified that Liberia would be much more stable if
Okay.
they didn't.
So let me
take
make the
over.
debate juicy. Someone posted a comment here that I have my opinions on. I would like to hear your opinions. John Maolo says, Leo, I don't think any of you at your ages are prepared to discuss this subject. You need to have someone more experienced in what really happened in long years before you were born. Well, let me read the whole thing. Listening to your discussion, it is based on a propaganda that has been used on the people taking advantage of the huge percentage of ignorance in the country. Take, for instance, since 1980, the so-called natives, which I don't agree with, have been in total control of the country. What have changed? Has the country gotten better in any way, or has the livelihood of the people gotten better or worse? Everything has gotten worse, and I mean very worse. I lived through those days, and now, I guarantee you, there is no comparison. So before you guys just go, it's like what people say in North America. Slavery ended so years ago. Black people now have the opportunity. So why are black people still complaining about slavery? That's one. But number two, the hypocrisy for me, John Maolo, of your statement is that those of you who say you were alive, experienced this, and have all of the context, where are your books? Where are your records? So that today we can be feeling the pain of the argument. Then you say we should not discuss it. You know what? Ellen Johnson said he wrote a book. We'll read her book. We'll discuss her account. We will reflect on the story. So if you have a contrary vision and you live, put it out there. That's what academic rigor is. Put it out there. Then you cannot keep the story and be bluffing with it. That you lived those days, you know the story. But when you're one supposed to talk about it, even though it affects in fact, it affects our lives worse than yours. So John Maolo, that's my opinion on it. That you're completely wrong. In fact, we will discuss it more to force y'all who have refused to give your account. I'm glad now you're giving your account here. Do that more. Write it in a book. We're in North America. If you're in the United States, it's easier to publish a book. It's easier to sit down, write your account of it, your lived experience of it. But for you to blame young people today, saying they shouldn't discuss it because they were not born, then what is history for?
Yeah,
right? That's my opinion. You guys take a shot at it.
Nah, you want to go?
Yeah. And with him saying, is it he or she? I don't know.
It's he. It's
okay,
he.
yeah.
John Maolo.
Yeah. With him even saying that the native people are taking over and there's no change and they're still suffering and everything, like that goes back to slavery and all those stuff. Like they were oppressed for so long.
Over 100 years.
For so long. And even when they started to take over, they took over with not being educated. They took over with not even knowing what to do.
Or understanding how the system works. Let her finish. But yeah, let her finish.
So it don't make no sense for us to sit here and say, oh, these people are taking over, but we're not seeing no change. How could we see change when there's like basically they don't have the education and the brain. I don't even want to say education because after the war finished, the schools are being built and all this stuff. But because
they were being suppressed from getting the experiences that would have been required to do things properly. They were suppressed. They were denied it. It's not like they refused to get it. But go ahead, Francis. What's your
I feel like I'm gonna sympathize with John a little bit.
Go ahead.
Right?
That's fair.
Like,
that's what the debate is for.
Yeah.
I think what he's trying to say, he's trying to hold the native Liberian government accountable as much as we're holding the Afro-American government accountable, right? Because like we can't lie, there's still corruption under Samuel Doe. There's still oppression. Like you said, he killed 13. He killed people, right? We're still gonna hold them accountable to the same extent. Just because they were oppressed before doesn't mean that they can't be held accountable.
No disagreement,
right?
But that's not what John is saying.
Like,
John is saying we don't even have the right to be discussing it.
I don't agree with that point, but I'm saying like the point
Second
about...
of all, he's saying since the native took over, nothing has been better. But guess what? The native took over through a civil war, through a military coup. So basically what happened, the entire structure and system was broken down.
Yeah.
Right? And I have argued that, in my opinion, and this is the reason why I don't like extremism, I have argued that extremism does not allow you to fully appreciate the responsibility you're about to take on.
Right.
Because it happens quickly. It happens in the twinkling of an eye when nobody even thought about, okay, what we would do is like people getting angry and say, let's burn this building down because people do bad things in this building, right? And quickly before you know it, it's tossing. Nobody sat down to say, okay, what do we do after we burn it down? All the children that get programs, and what do we do with them? Where do we put them? Do we have a new place? Nobody thinks about that part. You go into anger, you burn it down, and then now everybody starts to look at each other, what next? This was the natives' undoing. They didn't think through what would have happened. Even if you tore down a tyrannical, corrupt government, they didn't ask themselves if they had the capacity or whatever, and you know what to do after. Because if you tear down that government now, you have to take over. You have to do something different. So when they brought down these governments, you know what happened? The vacuum got created, and they were not sure which direction to go. Chaos ensued. And that chaos that ensued is what we're still dealing with and unpacking today and have not been able to fully reconcile with it.
Yeah, so two things.
Before you go, let me any first thoughts before we come back around. Joe Maulo's comment.
I just think it's kind of ignorant to say people can't discuss because of their age, because then how do you want history to move forward?
He put a follow-up. Let me be fair to John. He said, I accept your challenge, but I'm not saying you can't discuss it. But you can only discuss it in a very limited context. Absolutely.
That is true.
And that's what we're doing now. We are discussing it in our limited context. So for those of you who can give us more context, write it down. Create the account. And trust me, you see what we're doing? Just so you know, John, we have a book here. All of us are reading this book and we'll be discussing it in this limited context because Ellen Johnson shall leave context. Her book is a limited context also.
Definitely.
So give us more context so we can read more and more to get a richer context. Without doing that, it's the fault and the shame is on you guys who know the actual story, have refused to write it. The shame is not on us, it's on you. So if you want to correct that, give us the tools and we will discuss it. Let me go ahead.
Well, like after you put that point out, he's right about how we can only discuss it in a limited context. But then again, it's only fair for you to like share your knowledge with everyone else, so we could all discuss it in that.
Yeah. 2 points to your point. So one, extremism. I'm not defending extremism, but I feel like I'm not defending
It's in some cases it's been used. We've seen it where it succeeded. So I'm not here and saying, oh, absolutely. It can no. In some cases, Nelson Mandela and the ANC apartheid used some extremist tactics and stuff. So I'm not here saying one is absolute. I'm just saying, in this context,
in this context,
and in the general context of extremism, what are the dangers that are involved? And this is some of the dangers. Some things happen way too fast. Nobody thinks 6 months ahead. Everybody's focused on tearing down the thing and getting rid of it, and sometimes they're not prepared. I can give you many examples of extremism.
I don't think that's just like lack of planning and lack of just. I don't feel that's like a direct result of extremism, because prior there's been a lot of successful extremist regimes like the Soviet Union, Nazi Germany.
Was it successful?
Yeah.
How is this? Where is it today?
I mean, I'm not saying it's good, but it was.
No, I'm not saying good. Where
like,
is it today? If it is successful,
okay, but like that, I don't think that.
it collapsed.
I mean, Germany started a whole world war and they almost
it
won.
collapsed.
But
Right?
like,
They almost won, except that they did not win.
they collapsed because they lost the war.
Exactly. So
But
they
that's
failed.
not the inner workings of that. The extremism is because the external. They lost the war, and Soviet
Yeah.
Union they collapsed over many years.
So
because
it
of external
failed.
pressures.
So you accept that experiment failed. Whether it was because of external or internal, the experiment failed.
Okay, then by that logic, a lot of other governments failed as well.
Name
That
them.
means that extremism doesn't work.
Name
as
the
well.
other ones
I
that
mean,
failed.
that non-extremism doesn't work as well.
True. I'm not saying non-extremism works or extremism. I'm saying to you, the challenges involved with it is that people get emotional, people move fast. Other forms of actions, it requires planning. I'll give you an example, the civil rights movement with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. They planned. Those marches were weeks and weeks, midnight meetings, and thinking through, what do we do after the economic boycott, right, that they did. It went on, I don't know for how many months, right? The bus boycott, when they decided that no black person will board the bus, they will walk. That kind of stuff takes a lot of planning and orchestration for it to happen.
Malcolm X plan too.
Exactly. Malcolm X planned, but what was the plan after? So when you plan to do
He
an
had a
action,
plan.
what was
Malcolm
the
X had a plan. He endorsed. I'm not.
so whose plan had longevity,
You know
was
why it
sustained
worked?
and lasted
Because it was
longer?
supported by white America. They had the power in that system. They supported it.
Why what worked?
They were scared. They're more scared of Malcolm X than Martin Luther, because Malcolm X, he preached self-defense. People think he preached violence. He preached self-defense. He said, if a white man comes and attacks you, you should attack him back. That's all he said. He didn't say to attack the white man or anything.
Yeah.
So white America was way more scared of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. We can all agree with that, because he was.
Which one was the most successful?
Like I said,
Again, I
Martin
agree with your
Luther,
point, but what
because
was
white
most?
America supported
Whatever
him.
the reasons were, I don't disagree
There's a
with
reason why
it.
Malcolm X isn't taught in schools. There's a reason for that.
But my point is, which one do you think was more successful?
Like, what do you mean? Define successful in this context.
Successful mean had the greatest impact. Still today has an impact. That's what I mean. Successful when you do something.
Because it was pushed more by the ruling
I don't
power.
disagree, but still answer the question: which one was most successful?
Okay, but like you're trying to put it's a fallacy, like debate tactic, where you're trying to like push me to like agree to your logic. But
No, don't agree to my logic.
It's not black and white.
State the fact. No, it's not black and white. By the way, there were a lot of things that Malcolm X did that contributed immensely to the civil rights movement.
Exactly.
So I'm not disagreeing that Malcolm. I'm not degrading or dismissing Malcolm. Malcolm is one of the icons of the civil rights movement. Period. What I'm saying to you, Malcolm X's tactics versus Dr. King's tactics. Dr. King's tactics were more successful than Malcolm X. Doesn't mean Malcolm X was a failure. This is not about saying one person succeeded, one person failed. But if it was just Malcolm X, let's assume Dr. King did not do what he did, we wouldn't have had most of the changes we have today. When Malcolm X died, a lot of that waned away when he died.
Nah, that's not true. The Black Panther movement,
Where
all
is
those
it?
movements, they came from Malcolm X.
Where is the Black Panther movement?
They got shut down by the CIA.
Exactly. Where is the civil rights movement? It's still ongoing.
What are you
It's still
trying, what
on.
are you
It's
trying
still
to say
where,
right now?
where is the NAACP? It's still ongoing.
Because like I said, it's ongoing because the country, like white America, it was less scared of Martin Luther.
No, you
than
know
Malcolm
why?
X.
Not all white America came around it.
It's
Some.
external influence, not internal influence.
But you know why some white America came around it? Because they could relate to that. There's nothing wrong with that. They were unable to relate to Malcolm X movement. There were allies from the white community who joined these movements, but they joined what they could relate to. And there's nothing faulty about Malcolm X as a result. So I'm not trying to tell you Malcolm X is wrong or whatever. I'm just saying to you, Dr. King tactics were more effective and yielded more long-term results.
They were more effective in the social climate they're doing. I agree with that.
So today,
I agree with
let's
that.
come back to our conversation here with extremism. I'm saying to you, extremism, the risks that come with it, is difficult to manage.
I mean, yeah.
Because if somebody says to you, the President Tobin and his family have marginalized us for 100 years, so let's go and kill him. Right? Nobody took the time to think, so do we even know what they've been doing for 100 years? So you go and kill him now, there are all kinds of other things in place that you're not even aware of. And then you think you've taken over, just to wait 6 months later and see something else unravel that you didn't even know was there. Compared to say, we need to protest or plan to force him to resign or whatever other movement that is, there's more thought in that. Because you know why? Even if he resigns, he's not dead yet. He's there. If he needs to be questioned about something, he can be. So for me, I'm more on the fact of saying the dangers and risks that come with extremism is harder to manage. That's why I'm often not a big fan of it, because I'm not saying it doesn't get results. I'm just saying it's more problematic.
Right.
But before I any final thoughts on this? Let's get a phone. We can do that after, please. Any final thoughts on this before we close on our last topic?
Okay, once again, I'm not defending extremism. I'm just trying to
No, state the
room
point.
for thought, right?
Yeah.
So Nazi Germany. Let's say, so Hitler, or even Stalin. Let's use Stalin. He's more, it's
Yeah.
less controversial, right? Stalin.
Yeah.
He industrialized his country, right? There used to be agriculture, not even a world power.
Yep.
He made them equal to the United States, and that's where the Cold War started, right? So Stalin, he changed his country all around.
Yep.
So
And how did he do it? Was that a marginalization of so many people?
extremism.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So through that extremism, no one questions, like, Stalin had complete control over society, right?
That's why the American Liberians were in Liberia, if you want to compare. At extremism.
No, but I'm saying, like,
Yeah.
I'm not defending it, but I'm just room for thought. It can work,
Yeah.
right? The only reason the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991 was because Stalin died in 1956,
Mm-hmm.
right? So once he died, it collapsed.
This is the exact point that I just made to you.
But what I'm trying
You
to
can
say
hold
is,
that together, but you can't live forever. So do you want to build systems that can outlast you for that success to continue to grow? Or do you want to build systems that when you die, there's a danger that it will collapse? Because there's no one else that can hold it together like you.
so what's like your overarching point? Like,
Let me give you an
that-
example. Empowerment Square. I founded Empowerment Square. Do I want to build it in a way where I hold it? God forbid I walk away tomorrow, it collapses. Or do I want to build it in a way where I work myself out of a job? That if I walk away tomorrow, it continues without me. So I'm not saying right or wrong. It's not the argument. The argument is which approach tends to have a longer lasting impact. And most authoritarian extremist leaders, that's what happens whenever they die, the thing disintegrates. It doesn't matter if it was for positive reason. or
China,
negative
that
reason.
didn't happen in China.
China is different though.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm trying to say. So under certain social and political and environmental climates, anything is possible under any climate. I mean, depending on the climate.
So the dangers and risks that are involved, I mean, you know how much extreme China has to go to. to keep that. What is the murdering of the Rohingyas? What is how they treat Islam? Or how their own people, you have to control it. You can't even have open access to social media. You can't have open access to the internet. You can't have
I agree with that, yeah.
So I'm not saying no, but I'm just saying the extremes you have to go to be able to do that. At some point, can you sustain it forever? The question would become, so far China looks like they're doing it, right? But wait till a crack opens in that, for example. Again, we don't know. So I'm not here to debate that, but I'm just saying to you, think about how much they have to do, the security control, spying on everybody. Like that's complex. That's a complex web of control you've created. And there's always the risk that somebody might defect. There's always that. Now you see how they can execute and get rid of their own people if they just notice that somebody is going wrong, right? So extremism is an important conversation because that's what got us to where we are. And extremism always begets another extremism because the people against who you are extremist, they too then feel they have to come to you. Mm-hmm. So the day they get the chance of power,
that's how
they come at you.
The Hamas was created.
That's how they come at you because other people marginalized for so long and then they get power, they use the exact same tactics that was used against them.
I mean, I can see in that sense because, for example, like civil rights, right? I wouldn't say Malcolm X was an extremist. He was just very
extremist just means you are extreme in your approach. You go to the extreme. It doesn't denote any particular.
So it's subjective then.
It's subjective of what you do. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess in that sense it kind of makes sense because imagine if black people in America were suppressed for a long time, but they didn't turn out there wasn't. It didn't turn out how it turned out with the Hamas or turned out with the revolution in America. I mean, in Liberia, and I feel like it was a result of the climate there. So, in that sense, where it's there's less risk involved, I guess I understand what you're trying to say now.
Okay, so let's close now. Last topic: the Liberian community in Hamilton, since this is where we live. And again, I told all of you when these topics come out, speak freely as you feel. If you don't want to speak to it, that's your prerogative as well. Mm-hmm. So we have an issue brewing where I'm going to write an open letter to the community on. Our leadership currently was elected almost a year ago, got inaugurated, everything. We have a constitution in place. And since the leadership came in power, has abandoned the constitution.
Of constitution of that?
Of the community association.
Okay.
Has abandoned it. So the first thing that was said that, the constitution was horrible, the way it was written and blah, 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 blah. Right or wrong, doesn't matter. That is the Constitution, right? Until you can change it, it's the law of the land. It's been abandoned for almost 1 year because they said they want to write a new Constitution, right? But the thing that gives you legitimacy to write a new Constitution is the other Constitution. A new Constitution is not a Constitution because it's not even in place. What is in place? So it's been abandoned. So they're writing a new Constitution. They've come up with a draft of the new Constitution. But there are many other things in the Constitution that has been abandoned. For example, the Constitution said 3 months after your election, you need to set up a board. Because it is the board that oversees the leaders if they do something wrong. So right now, let's say if you're upset in the community with something, who do you go to with the leadership? You're supposed to go to the board because it's the board that can summon them. Right now, you can't go to anybody. Right now, they report to nobody. They can do whatever they want, however they want. Because there's no board in place, there's no constitution in place. So the Constitution also said if you don't pay your dues, your membership can be revoked. So all of a sudden now, the new Constitution, they want us to go to vote on it. Now they're saying all those who haven't paid their dues, you will not be able to vote on the Constitution. So they're bringing the old Constitution back now, plugging things out of it that are convenient, when for 1 year, they haven't abided by it. The old Constitution said our meetings are every month, the last Sunday. We've never had a meeting on that date. They call the meeting whenever they so choose. And there are all kinds of other things they've been just violating. So the question is, now these few days they're saying they're bringing back the old Constitution, but they're not bringing back the whole, they're only bringing back parts of it. And one of the parts they have brought back now, they say, since they say they should set up a board now, they will set up a board now. But the board setup is secrecy. So all of a sudden we woke up one morning, names just appear that the board has been appointed for us to approve. How? What was the process? So there was no legitimate process to allow qualified people to participate in the process. So my thing is, looking at our community, is this how our community should be run? Is the leadership in the right? If you were in this case, is this how we should approach it? Or how should we approach it? What decision should we make and how should we look at this?
Before we start, what did the old constitution say about making a new one? Like,
The old constitution says a new constitution to be made has to be voted by 2/3.
And was that
majority of the community
did that
for it to come
happen?
into effect? No, we don't even have it yet. They just released the draft.
So that's illegal then, right?
In my opinion, it is illegal.
It's not an opinion, it's a fact.
Yeah.
If it's violating the rule of the organization,
it is illegal.
Then it's against the law.
It is illegal.
So how is this happening then? How about that?
That's the point. So then where do you go? So the question is, what do you do? That's the question we are wrestling with.
I think this is a coup. It's the equivalent of a coup at this point, because it's like these group of people, right? People agreed, like the history of the organization, they agreed with to follow these rules of the organization, and now they're breaking these rules of the organization, and no one can stop them. So they're monopolizing power. So like, what can you do?
That's the question I'm asking you. What do you do? Because this is a $1 million question, right? When they blatantly break the rules, they flaunt the rules the way they are, flaunt the Constitution. Or what are your thoughts? If you don't know what to do, just in general. But again, these are the things, when these things happen, people think that you should create conflict and leave the community and blah, blah, blah. And the reason they struggle, with me particularly, is that I'm not leaving. I'm very outspoken. I would tell you for the record, and in the last meeting I told them, I wanted on the record that this is wrong. And you know what we do in the community? When people go in the corner, they say it. But then when you come to the meeting, when you say they're all afraid, they don't want to upset, so they stay silent. So it looked like it's you alone raising this issue, but then all of them are talking about it in the corner. So for me, I'm not worried about my name, because what I say, I'm very honest, what I say behind you, when I come in your presence, I should be able to repeat it. So I go to the meeting, I make the point. But then what they do, they start to make it look like, oh, you're just problematic or whatever that is. So what do you guys think?
I think they should go to the national. Is there so this is the Liberian community in Hamilton, right?
Yeah, this is the Hamilton community.
So, but are they connected to the national?
Yes, they are.
So go to the national community and appeal to that, they bring that authority down, and they don't, you can't arrest them if they don't listen, right?
No, you can take other actions if they're registered, if they're an organization in Canada. There are laws here as well. But I'm just saying, at the community level, what do you do?
Community level.
Because the Liberian community also is interesting. Right now you write a letter and file a formal complaint to the government, and the big thing happened, it'll make it look like, oh, you were the one who did this. So I'm just saying, at the community level, the same thing we're talking about activism and advocacy or whatever, we do on a big level, like in Liberia, advocating against a bad government. Here we are. What do? You're a member of a group that the leadership is operating in this way. What do you do?
For me, if I was a part of this community, which I guess I am, but I'm part of the youth,
yes,
the youth community, I don't really understand what the others got going on. But if I was a part of that community, I think the proper thing to do is not to vote for the new constitution. Because honestly, because what's the point of doing that? If the old one is not being respected, why do we think that if we vote for this new one is going to be the same? All I'm hearing is the new one just want to be there because the people that are in power right now didn't care to respect the people that put the old one into power, and that should not be an issue. If a constitution is there, even if you want to make a new one, you have to follow the old one till the new one is made and everybody vote for it. But since the old one is not being respected, nobody should vote for the new one. So then I guess the community is just not going to have a constitution because that's how people want it to be. Because if it wasn't being respected then, and now you guys don't even have a new constitution yet, that means the community don't have a constitution.
That's
because
correct.
the old one is not being enforced or whatever. So if I was a part of, I personally would not vote for it because it's nonsense to me.
Yeah.
So that's one approach. So not vote for whatever the new constitution. Because first of all, there's no process that legitimizes the new constitution you're voting for.
Yeah.
Right.
Because there has to be a law that says, here's how you do this. You can't just get up in a vacuum. The organization is not being started from scratch. It's already in existence.
Yeah.
But then the funny part is this whole attitude of picking and choosing convenient portions of it. All of a sudden, they'll say, oh, the Constitution says we should do this. They pick one part. But then all of a sudden, the Constitution says they kick the other part. So conveniently picking and choosing.
So I'm thinking two things, right? So they're making an amendment to the first constitution, or there's just
they said amending the first constitution.
Okay, so there's still a constitution, but right now they're in the process of amending it, right?
Yeah, but that constitution is not being applied. It's not being enforced.
Okay.
But they say it is a constitution they are amending.
So it's not being applied.
No.
This is okay. So my next point is this is why I feel like you said, vote against it, right? And the community has to find a way to like take back power to like, and when they do that, to create checks and balances. Because in Canada, this will never happen.
But the checks and balance is the board.
That's why
the Constitution said 3 months after the election of a new leadership, the board should be instituted. There was a reason for that, because that's the check. Let's say if we had a board in place right now, then anybody could file a formal complaint to the board of the leadership, because the board is the highest decision-making body of the organization. And they are under legal obligation. But now, they decided that's the first violation of the Constitution. They've been in power now for almost a year. Right.
Okay, so check. Even then, the board. Okay, what I'm thinking, right? The president of the community, the board. That's all federal. That's like it's not. Okay, it doesn't have to be like named federal, but that's like under one group, right?
Yep.
And then there should be another group that what's the word, that holds them accountable. So like maybe like a partisan board, like where like there's people, members of the community.
The structure of organizations is that. It's the board. So board members are the people who have legal liability. Emil, can we put that away now, please? Have legal liability. So when a organization gets sued, they can be dragged to court. That's why they take their job seriously, right? They have legal responsibility, so they can't just make funny decisions because they don't want it backfires. That's the legal framework.
Damn.
But none exists in Hamilton right now. But what does that say also? Members of the community who are silent.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, because for the community to be so like silent about it for a year now, that means they themselves don't even care if they have a constitution.
Exactly.
Because for you to see something that's going on and is wrong, and even if you know it's wrong and you're quiet about it, that means you don't care if it's being changed. So I think the issue, like, even though the people that are in power is the main issue, but the other issue here is the community, because why is the community not standing up for what? For their own constitution? Like, and now when something happens, I'm gonna go against somebody, a part of the community, that's when everybody is gonna stand up and be like, well, our constitution didn't say this, but you didn't have a constitution to begin with.
Yeah, so I will ask the question, what would you do? Let's assume you are in the situation and you alone, you're speaking, or you want to figure a way to get this done, right? What do you do? Because advocacy, let's be fair, is always the minority voice. Because most people are scared. They never step forward. They will say it to you in private, but they never come forward. Most people are afraid of confrontation. So you who raise the issues usually, and this is how a lot of people got problems with Leo. It's not personal. It's just that I can't know that much or know what is right and sit somewhere, because guess what, 5 years down the road, people will come and be like, but who are those here? And these things were happening. But two, it's dangerous for all of us.
Definitely.
Because we all pay membership dues. We're giving resources that people can use however they want, because there's no constitution. We all are aligning ourselves to something that we're trying to not have our children model. We're modeling things, what to see. How can we go home and tell our children about lawlessness and all of this stuff when we are part of a group that is exemplifying it, but we cannot speak? So I've spoken up, and I'm going to be amplifying that even louder. Again, like I always say to them, if I'm wrong, correct me, right? Show me where I'm wrong. And the thing is, they will never come up to speak. Till today's day, I asked a simple question in the group to the leadership. Is our organization registered? It's been almost 4 weeks, no response. So nobody can tell us if we're registered or not. The reason they can't tell us, because a registered organization, you must have a board. So if the registered organization, then they have a secret board somewhere. And if you didn't register the organization, also then you have a problem.
It's ridiculous.
So what I'm hearing is that the people who are in this community have all the power. They pay dues that keep the
Everybody, you have to pay dues to be a member.
So
for 15 years, my family have paid their dues consistently for 15 years. Because I'm one of those people who believe whether you agree or disagree with the leadership, you pay your dues. That's what gives you the power to advocate and step in, because you are legitimate in that group. So we pay our dues. Even if I disagree with the leadership, I still pay my dues.
Yeah, then I have a solution. I mean, in my opinion, right? The people come together, right? A union, kind of, right? When the workers are getting abused by employers. Historically, there's always been unions, so they come together, they go on strike, they don't pay dues, and they protest, and boom.
Exactly.
They can't do anything.
So the reason you're saying that, and it's interesting, because then what Liberians do they'll say, oh, that the people causing conflict in the community, you know, the way they do, right? They don't, the problem is brewing, everybody's sitting down. If somebody steps up and take action, then they try to make it look like you are the one creating the problem. So this is good conversation, but this is one of the biggest problems in our community. It just, at this level. So that's one option, take it to the national body. Another option is, also the first step is speak out. I tell anybody, that's the first step, speak out. So those of you listening, Liberians, that's the opinion of the show here. So first of all, there's no argument that it's illegal. So when I raised it in the meeting, I asked the leadership, they said, oh, when they took over, the Constitution was too convoluted, it was impossible to implement. What did we expect them to do to implement it right away? So there's no debate, you know, that the action occurred. And, you know, we're not debating that the illegality happened. Because that would have been a different conversation. Someone has said, oh, that's lie, that's not what happened. I mean, who do you need to text? I get on the show. Who do you need to text? We're live. So, what do you do in this case? Because there's no debate about the fact that the illegality has occurred. The debate is, what do we do? In my opinion, I've said it, you have to put the Constitution into place right away. The entirety of it, all of it applies. Or else the new Constitution is illegitimate. In and of itself, it's not legitimate.
Definitely.
And any actions you've taken up to now, if you want to be drastic and go extreme, all of them are illegitimate. Because it was not done. And by the way, they swore on this Constitution when they were taking office. That's what brought them to power, that they will uphold this Constitution. That was their oath. And then as soon as they got through swearing, they abandoned the Constitution.
Yeah.
Right? But anyway, closing comments. Let's close up here.
For me, going back to our first topic, which was the
Liberia situation.
The Liberia situation. The first thing that even brought this upon us, that we're, you know, the people living there are still struggling today, is part of your topic, discrimination. There are people that are thinking they're better than other people, and they felt as though the people below them are supposed to just live their way of living and do things how they want it to be done, and that should never be the case in any issue. Not even if you're a parent and your child, you should not, you know, enforce your belief on your child. You should give them the opportunity to have their own understanding of other stuff. So I think that was the root from everything, discrimination. There's still discrimination in our own country. So I don't know, how do we expect ourselves to grow and be better, not even to be better than other people, because we shouldn't have that mindset. It's just, how do we be better for ourselves? It's for us to make everything equal. It's for us to not move from Monrovia and go to another county and see these people as country people, or they're not civilized enough. Our culture is our culture, and we have to all be able to sit down and agree that we're one, and not look down on other people for us to move forward as a country. And for the Hamilton community thing, I think the people are part of those group. You guys are adults, grown people. Some of you guys have children. It's important for you guys to understand that when you sit down and agree on something, you have to go along with it. It don't matter if along the line you decide, oh, I agree to this, I know, but I don't want to do it no more. You still have to follow through to the very end. And with the Constitution thing, it's mind-blowing to me that, you know, a whole community can just sit down and not have a Constitution. Like, you guys have to have something to go by. So I think that's something you guys still have to keep talking about, something that you guys got to enforce and be and like have strong beliefs about. Like, the community have to have a Constitution. Even when a new one comes, somebody have to stand up and be like, oh, let's not forget the old one.
Until you can replace it.
Yes, it has to be respected, and that's just my thing. I think you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah. No. So today was a good episode. A lot of debates, a lot of different opinions, and on the Liberian topic, it's interesting. Without doubt, the history of the elite settler class still trickles down to what's happening currently, without question. And the question on Tolbert and whether or not what happened was, like, we know it wasn't okay, but what happened was like understanding those two perspectives gave a lot of insight. And on the Constitution crisis thing, yeah, I agree. Like it's kind of silly how that even happened.
Silly, yeah.
Like,
Definitely.
I don't know how that even how'd that happen? Like how did it happen?
We will dig deeper.
Yeah.
We'll get more information.
Yeah, but there should be more order there, and that's about it, honestly. Yeah.
Lemuel.
Well, I think it was really interesting. Like in what we dived into today, going into the history of Liberia and talking about the constitution of the Liberian community in it. Like it kind of just like highlights how like we're not completely together as a community, even throughout history, where like it shows divide, and even through now, even as we're not even in Liberia, it shows divide within the community.
All right, so what will happen, I'll give each of you a copy of this book. Today was just a preview of the conversation because we're just coming raw at it, right? I'm pretty sure some people's perspective might change or not change as they start to read deeper. But I also encourage you, go on YouTube, go online, search who was Stolberg, right? Just check. There might be some accounts you might find of people just going deeper into it. This book gives a good summary of a bunch of those times because Ellen Johnson sort of worked through multiple of those, so it's her account of it, but it doesn't take away from the facts being elevated. So what I often do when I read something that intrigues me, I'm like, that's for context. I go on the internet and check and see what an objective another person context of that same event is. But it also goes personal. Talk about the patriarchal state of our society.
Yeah,
how men and women, how husbands treated wives. She was a victim of abuse, spousal abuse as well. She goes into that as well, mimicking a larger Liberian society and understanding of relationships as well. So I think it's a rich book. I think she did her job. Those who think it's not accurate, write your own. That's my point. If you're alive too and it's not accurate, please write yours. We'll read yours too and then we'll compare and contrast. And it's better to have multiple perspectives also. Okay. But for you to just condemn others who've done the difficult job and bravery, because there were other people who were there. So people might challenge accounts if you put it down, but they were able to put it down. I have a lot of respect for that. Then for other people who say they're keeping theirs in their head. But it's been a good afternoon, and we look forward to next Saturday. So next Saturday we'll be going deeper, because by then at least people would have gone into some of this, so Francis cannot be the only guy to be. What I would say, we would decide on where we want to stop. Read as much as you can, but at least a portion, so that we don't try to take on too much at once, and we can take it one at a time. I stop there and say have a good weekend, everybody, and we'll be in touch next week. My name is Leo Johnson. We're with Martin Liu, we're with Francis, and with Lemuel, coming to you from Hamilton on the Kuwoo podcast Turning Point. Bye-bye.
Episode.